Hi, everyone. Welcome back. How was recess? This is literally the quietest group of business leaders I have ever been around. This is really not representing. I think you all have been working remotely by yourself. How was recess, everyone? Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Just a shout out to Ali Fakeki and the Juno team. Loved that conversation earlier. I just want to tell you a quick story about Juno that I found interesting. I guess I'd ask a question first because we're talking now, right? Has anyone gotten a perk that they really, really liked? That really helped them? We've got someone, clearly you like yoga, so that's what companies give is yoga classes. So the Juno team recognized an interesting perk that was purchased, I think, 3 times, right, by the same gentleman. He was purchasing with his perks, his well-being perks, Legos. And he said something that I think we all could really connect with. He's like, I'm looking at a screen all day, right? I'm building virtually all day, but I need something that I can build, I'm paraphrasing, that pulls me away from that screen. I mean, what an amazing perk, and that's what they do at Juno. And again, thanks to Ali, and hear it for the team at Juno. All right. Our first panel, I think that's why we have 4 chairs here. Of course it is. Introducing now, leading our panel, Lawrence Coburn, the CEO and co-founder of Twine. Lawrence. Yeah, let's hear it for Lawrence, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to invite my panel out here as well. So let's kick this off. So my name is Lawrence. I'm the founder of a company called Twine. Twine builds software for remote and distributed teams. We focus on the social part of remote onboarding, on turning your virtual all hands away from content dumps into something interactive. So you can check us out downstairs. So today we are talking about the good stuff. So if anybody out there is trying to hire, trying to get ready, trying to onboard new folks in this age of distributed and remote, this is going to be the panel for you. So in my mind, it all starts with the talent. So we're moving from an environment where we hire the best people within 30 miles of our office to the best people in the world. And we're moving to an environment where we're onboarding folks and we have to avoid them feeling like they're on an island, that they're lost out there. So let me start with a couple of introductions. So Janelle, why don't we start with you? Why don't you introduce yourself and what you do, where you are?
Thank you, Lawrence. I'm Janelle Bieler. I am with Adecco, which is a global workforce solutions company. I run our Canadian operations here. I'm really passionate about this topic. Our motto is to make the future work for everyone. And so to me, that means whether they are remote or in person, how can we really give them that very best experience?
That's great. Actually, why don't we jump to Brandon, who's zooming in here. Brandon, can you hear us okay? Awesome.
I sure can. Well, hey, I'm Brandon Sammut, the Chief People Officer at Zapier. We're on a mission to make automation work for everyone by automating tedious tasks and letting humans spend more time doing the things that humans do best. The team itself is 700 people strong in 40 countries. And 40 of the 50 US states.
And if you all don't know Zapier, they are one of the earliest thought leaders on how to run a company successfully, fully remote. And so I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, all eyes turned to Zapier and turned to GitHub. Those were the 2 folks that had been really writing the book on this stuff. So I'm going to be leaning on Brandon a lot on this panel. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Paul McKinlay. I lead internal communications, and since 2020, the evolution to remote-first working for Cimpress, which is parent company to a whole load of e-commerce brands around the world, one of which you probably have heard of, Vistaprint, now known as Vista, and a whole load of other businesses that support marketing materials for small businesses.
So I'll give a little bit of a kind of kudos to Paul. So Paul has built the most extensive and thorough remote onboarding program that I've seen. And so today we're going to hear a little bit about that from top to bottom, how they measure success. So get excited for this. This is if you're trying to figure out how to onboard folks, Paul's going to be your guy.
Hey, Lawrence, Paul's team has done that. Paul did not
Paul's team.
single-handedly do that. I know they're watching.
I'm a big fan of Paul. I'll just say it. Marion, how about you?
Hi, my name is Marion Balandra. I'm the founder and CEO of Meridian Remote Teams. Meridian is a fully remote team that's operating in the Philippines right now. I come from the Bay Area in the Silicon Valley region, a serial entrepreneur. I've been running an IT consulting and business solutions company over there, and wanted to help women and focused in my roots in the Philippines to try and find a lot of women and children work remotely in the US and around the world.
So Marion touched down from a flight from Egypt about 7 minutes ago.
Right.
Delays. So let's kind of give a quick round of applause for Marion for battling through it.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get this started. So I'm gonna get right to the good stuff. And Janelle, this question is gonna be for you. So I'm an old school CEO. I manage by walking around. I like to see people butts in chairs. If you're not in the office, I don't think you're actually working. But over the last 2 years, I've found religion. I believe in remote work. I believe in distributed teams, but I don't know how to start. How do I start tapping into talent pools that are farther away than 30 miles from my office? Janelle, over to you.
So this is a question I get from clients consistently, is how do I tap into new talent pools, and what can I do, to your point, right? I'm used to managing in a certain way. I'm not exactly sure how to do this. And the recommendation that I always make to our clients is that you have to follow the candidate. So I'm going to talk for a minute about what we're seeing kind of in the candidate marketplace. I think you all know it is a candidate-driven world right now. Everyone talks about the Great Resignation. I like to call it the Great Reevaluation, because people are trying to figure out what it is that's important to them. Flexibility. Right? I think the old way of doing things, an old school CEO has to change the way that their work is being structured in order to attract the right kind of candidates. So flexibility, whether that's upgraded technology, we've all had to work with new technologies in these past 2 years, but really making sure that you have the environment to support the types of candidates that you want to bring in. You have to shift to a company that is truly able to support remote by building the experience that you can bring people into the organization and truly make sure that people feel connected. You can't just say, I want to go hire people from all over and leave them out there on their own, right, to kind of do their own thing. So I know we're going to talk a lot about this on the panel, about how do you make people really feel ingrained in the organization.
All right, that's great. And just out of curiosity, how many people does Adecco employ globally?
Globally, over 30,000.
Okay, and a lot more insights coming from their customers. So Marion, let me turn it over to you. So you've been advocating for remote distributed teams for a long time, before it was cool. What are some of the best practices that you're seeing in terms of helping old school CEOs like me, I'm not really that old school, to come to terms with the new reality?
Yes, well, one of the things that I always recommend to friends and co-founders and CEOs alike when looking to scale their team is, start with your own network. Find some of your partners who have used outsourcing before. I can only speak for outsourcing. So I have clients who mix and match, where they would, hire directly remotely, or they'd, select an outsourcer like myself and hire through us, or do a combination of both. But the best way to start is really looking into your network. What type of business model do you have? And somebody else that has the same typical model and have done onboarding or have taken on remote workers, ask them for recommendations. Customer voice is very important. It's up and coming right now, and that's the best way to figure out what would be the right fit, because in the end, it's all about fit.
Yeah, I think that's right. So my last company employed about 70 folks in the Philippines, and it was a scary move for us. And the way that we got across the line, it was one of our employees' college roommate had built a group in the Philippines, a team, and because we had that trust, we were able to get across the line. So everybody needs their baby step of trust in this kind of thing. So it's really interesting to hear that. Okay, so let me change focus a little bit here. And so Brandon, who's on the screen right now, So Zapier, I mentioned this a little bit in the beginning, but they've been, from day one, they've been a remote first company. Their founder, Wade, has been advocating for this is the new style of work long before the pandemic. And so I'd love to hear from you. How did you all build a world-class hiring process in a world where you're not geography constrained? And what advice would you have for the other hiring managers out there?
That's a great question, Lawrence. You know, interestingly, 10 years ago, we had fewer tools to address this issue than we do today. And so it's really interesting from that perspective 10 years later to think about like the wealth of technology that we use to create equity, consistency, and also just engagement and belonging, right? With a global workforce, all working from home. And also how to weave that into the experience of getting to know Zapier as a candidate and an interviewee. One thing we've hit on a little bit that I would underscore is, you know, when thinking about all of these experiences and processes, you know, to ground the design for each back to some form of business value. You know, a lot of the conversation around remote these days has something to do with access to talent, given that a lot of talent markets are really tight right now. Well, these things come in cycles. And so, you know, our number one encouragement to companies that are thinking through remote onboarding and remote experiences, ground that in some type of durable business purpose. It may be getting closer to your customers. It may be around retuning the economics of your business by diversifying cost of talent. Whatever the case may be, if you start there in some type of kind of durable mission or premise for remote work, remote onboarding, and so on, that's going to persist right through the ups and downs of the talent economy in a way that will help your management team maintain focus on providing a great experience.
Can I ask you what that enduring business value is for Zapier? How do you link sort of remote work into your core mission?
Sure. Zapier is all about kind of unlocking human potential, right? In our case, through workflow automation. We're also a global company, right? Zapier's mission is to make automation work for everyone. And we think a lot about what does it mean to live into the everyone part of that mission. And it's one of the top reasons why we went remote so early, because the design, the implementation, and the continuous improvement of a product that really is meant to be of use to different people and organizations all over the world requires a global workforce that can bring those perspectives to the table.
Got it. And if you all don't know Zapier, you should look into them. It's one of the most interesting companies, in my opinion, in all of technology. They integrate all of the systems and tools that are out there. If one of those systems go down, I've heard Zapier described as sort of a bug reporting system for the internet, because then Zapier will send you alerts that something is broken. And they've been able to grow to be one of the most valuable technology startups in the world, fully remote. So really fascinating company, fascinating founders. Okay, Paul, let's go over to you. So let's flash back to March 2020. You all are running a great business. You probably have your processes set in the world the way it was before the pandemic. Talk us through what happened from a hiring perspective. How did you realize you had to start changing your practices, and walk us through sort of the tick-tock of what went down at Cimpress in March 2020?
Yeah, for sure. So March 2020, like probably many of you, we ran home and hid under our beds with our laptops and hoped for the best. And really pretty soon discovered that we needed to take a good hard look at those processes. But people were performing, they were engaged, they were productive, they were doing a good job. We were not a pandemic tailwind business. We had pretty heavy headwinds from the pandemic from a revenue and other perspective. But the team was doing great. And so first of all, we made the decision early to go remote first. Which has been a godsend, especially as a communicator. I've not been in the business of delaying people and pushing off decisions for the last 2 years. We declared early and went for it, and all credit to the exec team for doing that. Coming to hiring, huge credit to the talent acquisition team around the world. We've hired 600 people since January of 2021 and onboarded 600 people since then as well.
All remote, Paul? All 600 all remote?
I'm speaking specifically about remote. So we have manufacturing and other parts of the business, but we've hired 600 remote first team members during that time. So talent acquisition had a real task to do because the world changed, and there are a couple of key things that they did that I think made a real difference. First of all, revisiting all of the tools, the job boards, and looking at the ones that could really access new talent globally around the world. It was a game changer. Secondly, really looking at where recruiters are and making sure that they're in the geographies rather than centralized around the offices, so that we can really focus on local knowledge to tap into that level of talent. And then revisiting the whole hiring process. We found early on that people don't want to sit on Zoom for 8 hours and have 6 different interviews. That's what we always did because people traveled to a place, and that was what you put them through. You put them through that grinder. We had the opportunity to revisit that, and so candidates were telling us, let's do this over a couple of days. I can be fresh, I can perform best. And by the way, it's much more flexible for our team as well. And so multiple changes to the hiring process that have enabled us to recruit so many people and so well.
How far baked is your hiring process now? Are you done? Do you have a process that you think is going to live on for the next 10 years, or is it just a constantly evolving thing?
If I can answer that question from the whole of remote perspective, I don't think this will ever be done. So the evolution is just going to keep happening. We're going to push the boundaries. You see that happening in slow motion with some of the big tech companies out there, but in much faster pace with smaller or really responsive companies. And so I don't think hiring process or onboarding process or the way we implement async or any other part of our operation will ever be complete. That's not our target. Our target is to improve it every day.
Yeah, and so I think that's consistent with what I'm seeing as well. I spoke to 120 heads of people for growth and enterprise companies in Q1. Yes, it was a lot of conversations, but one of the most striking things to me is that nobody has it figured out yet. Everyone is still evolving. Everyone is trying to figure out what are the remote work policies. Do we have is it role by role? Is it department by department? What are the functions that should be in office at least some of the time? What is our compensation policy? What happens if our $400K a year engineer moves from Mountain View, California to Bali? Does their comp change? Does it not? So all this stuff is really, really hard. And one of the things I'm learning is that people ops leaders are burning out at a tremendous rate. 1 in 5 are on sabbatical. So it's just been a crazy time. So the Airbnb announcement, so they made a very structured, thoughtful announcement about remote work at Airbnb. And I think I read that they got 800,000 applicants based on that. Is that what you all saw? Brandon, what did you make of that whole thing? Does that open up a whole new world of problems to have that sort of volume coming in out of your candidate pool?
I'm sure if you ask Airbnb's recruiting team, they might say yes today. But I would also tell you Airbnb's move was incredibly savvy. And one of the reasons why, it gets back to what we talked about a moment ago, this kind of work from anywhere program for their workforce is a perfect tie-in or analog to their mission, right? Even if they only hire 5,000 of those 800,000 applicants, right? They have promoted, right, in a really meaningful way with a global workforce, right? This idea, right? They have replanted the seed, right? Using Airbnb as an example about choice and flexibility and the opportunity to take your work with you to the places and things that matter most to you, which is amazing marketing, right, for Airbnb's core product, in addition to the talent attraction benefit.
It's exactly what you were talking about, right? Tying your policies back to a strategic, inherent value of the company. And it's interesting to see. I think the same week or the week before, Apple lost one of the best machine learning executives in the world. And he's like, I'm really well paid. I really like my job. But my team needed a more flexible remote work policy. And so that's Apple. If Apple can't bully their folks into coming into the office, how is Twine going to do that, right? Come on. So we're entering a world where the power dynamics have shifted, but it's not all bad for employers. Suddenly our access to talent has gotten way more accessible, and you can find the perfect person for your culture and your values and the job at hand. So it's really exciting stuff. So let me turn to Janelle and Marion, and we'll start with you, Janelle. what have you learned about best practices for hiring folks that are not going to be in the office with you? What have you learned from your clients, from the Adecco experience itself? Has your interview process changed? What can you educate the folks out there on?
I think at the early stages of the pandemic, it was all about what is the best process, right? I need to have a process in place for my hiring, my onboarding, figuring out how we're going to do this. And what we saw happen was that most companies kind of shifted what they were originally doing for their in-person hiring, like what you just spoke about, right? We've always done it this way. This is how we're going to continue to do it, even though these people are not even going to be part of a face-to-face interaction with us. And so I think some of the biggest learnings, and we're fortunate that we speak with so many clients because we do get to hear and understand some of these best practices. But I think what has been very important is to really focus on that candidate experience. So shift from process to experience, and what are the things that you need to have in terms of touch points through both hiring and onboarding to ensure that that candidate is getting completely pulled into your culture. From a hiring perspective, I find that a lot of times we sell on the culture we used to have versus the remote culture that we have now. And you have people that get onboarded and they may feel like, hey, I understand what my job is and I understand the technology and I'm connected with my team, but this culture is nothing like what you sold me in the interview process because our world of work has changed. And I think that's been a learning for a lot of companies to really start to figure out what that new world of work looks like for their company and how you really sell that to people and then really bring them into that, right?
Yeah, where's the ping pong table, right? Where's the ping pong table I see on the Glassdoor page? Like, how do I get to it from my remote office?
Right.
Yeah, Marion, how about you? So you've been recruiting and onboarding folks remotely for a long time. What have you learned about sort of remote interview process and how do you get to a trust level? Is it about what Janelle says of like turning it into a candidate experience process opposed to a employer process? What have you learned?
Actually, thank you, Janelle, for bringing that up because she practically just shared the same onboarding experience. But one of the things that I really made sure I focused on in building a foundation for Meridian Remote Teams, being one of the first fully remote teams running out of the Philippines, was processes, right? Another thing was explaining to them who we are as a people, our culture, and so we attract like talent who share the same vision, share the same mission, because what are we without our culture? And so when I first initiated the onboarding experience for our candidates, and I call it a candidate experience as well too, and I would always pitch to my recruitment team and say, our candidate experience is at the same level of customer experience. Particularly for a team that's fully remote, you have to feed into your people. It has to be a people-first, people-driven organization for it to work. You have to understand, build so much empathy and, understand where your remote workers are coming from. And so, as I was building that entire process, I would also place in checks and balances where in every candidate that we'd onboard, we'd really run to them and say, how is the experience? Is there anything else that you think we could have done differently? And then apply that. We actually are very famous for doing recruitment dry runs when we do an onboarding because we're remote. It's a great way for the team to kind of come together, do something fun and learn. But at the same time, understanding how different people are, especially when you're onboarding people for us particularly, across the Philippines and then now in the UAE, which is, we've expanded last year. And, understanding how people operate in this new remote working space, especially because of the Great Resignation, the ball has somehow shifted. Right? You have people who know what they want, are all about pursuing, their joy and what's important to them. And so everybody else that wants to take a team fully remote has to respect that and embrace it. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind because competition is very, very stiff.
This feels like a mega learning from this panel. This feels like one of those moments where everything you know about interviewing and putting someone on the spot and trying to figure out if they are the right fit for you, you got to throw it out. This is a buyer's market. These are people that could not only interview with the 50 employers in town, but they can interview with the hundreds of thousands of employers around the world. So you need to start with the candidate experience if you are going to have a shot.
Lawrence,
yes,
I can
Janelle.
add something to that. I think the theme here, you have to be very purposeful about what your hiring is going to look like, what your onboarding experience is going to be, because you can't rely on the fact that I'm a new colleague and I can turn to Paul and ask a question, because I don't have that relationship when we're working remote and we haven't had those types of interactions or that trust that's built. And so I feel like that it has to be very thought out as to what those checkpoints look like and how you're going to really draw people into your organization. Otherwise, they're going to feel like they're left out.
Yeah, so can we talk about power dynamics for a second? And Janelle, you and I had a quick conversation back there, like the stock market is crashing, investment is coming down, potentially hiring is pulling back. Are you all seeing any signs of a change in power dynamic from a recruitment perspective, that perhaps there's a little more clout heading back to the employer? Brandon, I know you've been through a couple cycles here. Are you seeing any sense that the talent market is becoming a little more friendly for employers and less completely controlled by the candidate?
You can start to see some signals that might ultimately happen, but I think our opportunity is to build these systems and experiences as though power will remain in the hands of workers. Because even if that does ultimately change, that mindset encourages the right behaviors. It challenges us to take nothing for granted. Like a couple of our other panelists have spoken to, put in different words, it gets back to this notion of how do we wake up every day as a company and be worthy of being the right choice for the type of talent we're trying to attract to the company. And I think that mindset is worth holding on to no matter what happens with the economy.
I think especially if you're chasing the best talent in the world, like doesn't matter that when the market doesn't matter if you are a top skilled person in your domain, you're going to be able to choose your employer, particularly if most employers in the world are remote friendly. So yeah, really, really interesting point. Empathy coming first. Paul, did you have another comment?
Yeah, can I just add to that? I think the targets we set ourselves and the way we think about this, either shift to remote first or the way we operate remote first, is really important. And a couple of years ago, when I expressed an interest in being involved in our transition and ultimately was sitting with our founder and CEO and asking, what is it you want me to achieve with this transition? What can we work on? And as always, he surprised me and said, I want remote first to be a towering strength of our culture. And if you set that goal, and if you are working with all the teams across the organization in technology and talent acquisition and onboarding and everybody else with that kind of high-level goal in mind, it just changes the game. It changes the approach to the work, and it changes the outcomes of the work as well.
Again, Airbnb, that was not, we're going to make the most out of this announcement. This was, we are going on offense. This is an opportunity for Airbnb, the company, to attract the best talent. We're not dealing with a necessary evil here. We're embracing this new reality and going on offense. So I love that. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's move from the world of recruiting and hiring into the world of you have a signed offer, and now you are trying to onboard folks in a remote first environment, and you're trying to get them to feel like they're part of something. And so before I go to Paul, who I consider sort of my domain expert here, let me ask a question to the panel. Did anyone here onboard remotely in a new job?
Yeah,
I actually knew the answer to that. I knew Janelle had just done that. Okay, Brandon had as well. So Janelle, why don't we start with you? What was that experience like? What went well, and more importantly, what went wrong for you?
So I relocated from the US to Canada in December of 2020 to take over Canadian operations. And so I was taking over an entire team that I didn't know. So I was within the same company, but I was still onboarding in a whole other country. So there was all the technology issues. That definitely did not go smooth. Even intercompany, things that didn't work, and transferring of equipment and all sorts of things that were frustrating. And I hear that quite a bit from people onboarding remote, that that can be frustrating if you don't have that really kind of locked down. I think one of the other biggest challenges was that I was trying to really build trust and get to know my teams. And I know we'll talk a little bit about some of the best practices we're seeing, but I think that's so important. Again, purposefully, like getting people in front of the people they need to know within the organization. It can be daunting when you're new to have to go search out all those relationships. And so that was something that I learned from my own experience, that if we can give that to a new colleague and really kind of set that up for them so it makes it easy, would take some of that anxiety out of being new and trying to really get to know and build that trust with everyone.
It's so interesting. It sounds like you're describing the social onboarding, and like in the back in office days, that stuff used to happen organically. I know our customers, Microsoft, use us for onboarding, use Twine for onboarding, and it's like in the old days, you would be walked around the office, you would go to the team lunch, you would go to the team happy hour, and just sort of magically by the end of the week, as a new employee, you had built relationships with the folks around you. Think about that experience from a remote first perspective. Those things are not happening organically. You have to be intentional about finding ways to go out and make sure that those social connections, that trust is being built. How did you do it with your team?
You know, I made a list. These are all the people I need to know. I mean, it sounds really basic, but that's what it was. And I just started reaching out to people and proactively scheduling 15-minute chats. Let's meet for coffee, right? Just trying to get on people's calendars, working around their schedule to get to know them and understand what they did. We've taken that now, though, and actually built that into our process. So we create onboarding plans for anybody that starts that has that mapped out, where it's already all blocked in their calendars for them, appointments that are set, so nobody has to go out and kind of figure that out on their own.
Yeah, no, it's great. Brandon, how about you? What was your remote onboarding experience like?
Well, it started with a lot of transparency, which is interestingly one of Zapier's values, and for good reason, right? All remote company, access to information matters a ton, and making sure that's equitable across the whole team, starting with, interestingly, the interview experience. So I interviewed with and joined Zapier all remote, and actually met my team last week in San Diego in person for the first time, 9 months after I started. And so, Janelle, you spoke to a couple of the things that really mattered to me in my onboarding experience, including the onboarding plan itself. And this is one of those places where when we're like designing or redesigning a system, there's an opportunity to actually kind of take our game up a level. And so, Janelle, as you were speaking about like a really rigorous onboarding plan where, you know, your manager, the team that's bringing you in has kind of itemized like all the people you'll need to meet, kind of roughly in what order, for what reason. It's just one of probably dozens of examples of how an all remote onboarding experience can actually be not just a okay substitute, but in some ways a step ahead of traditional onboarding experiences.
I gotta think your remote onboarding team was better than most folks, just because Zapier's been at it for a while and you were joining the people team. So I bet you probably had sort of a crown jewel type remote onboarding experience. I know my wife recently went through it and it was not that. She felt on an island, she didn't feel connected, and it's hard stuff, right? So I think that's a great segue for us to pass the mic to Paul. So Paul's team at Cimpress, Paul and team at Cimpress,
thank you,
has built a very comprehensive process for onboarding 600 folks over the last 2 years. So let me just turn it over to you. Can you please walk us through top to bottom your whole program? And I would encourage folks to take notes on this.
Well, thank you. You said some very kind things about the work of the team. I really appreciate it. So like with all of the processes that when we went home in March 2020 and needed to revisit everything we do, onboarding was seen as a key, particularly as we were going through a very heavy hiring phase with all of these people to bring on board. I think first key to making real progress here was to have people dedicated to this process. And so there are great opportunities in the world for you to take on additional scope and to take on additional roles, and we all do that at times. I'm sitting here wearing a couple of different hats in my role. But we felt like with this transition to remote first, there were 3 or 4 things we really needed to have somebody dedicated to, and thankfully we were big enough to be able to invest. By the way, we were reinvesting all of the real estate savings that we've subsequently made, and so this was not extra money, this was a redirection of money. And we appointed internally or hired people to focus on knowledge management, collaborative working and async, learning and development for remote first specific skills, and onboarding. And we just wanted someone waking up in the morning worrying about the onboarding experience. And just like the towering strength of our culture goal that we had for the overall transition to remote first, we also set a goal for onboarding, remote onboarding, which was that our team members who remotely onboard tell us it was a world-class experience and the best onboarding they've ever had. Which, considering we were making this thing up as we went along, was a pretty ambitious goal, but we've lived that transparency goal, Brandon, I think, and we continually publish our team member feedback back to our team members on the progress that we're making. So
is that NPS? So is it NPS survey that you're capturing?
We do internal, so ENPS effectively, but yes, we've tracked that, and our new hires have been scoring us at 85 plus through this process. We want to make it 100, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So onboarding starts with pre-boarding. You often give an offer to people and then forget about them. And during that time, communications is really important, and we've worked hard on that, but also what line managers are doing to work on the onboarding plan into specific teams and into the specific work. Pre-boarding's been very important. Then there are a couple of other key goals that the team have been really working on. And we've established a 100-day onboarding program that we take people through this process. So we focus on knowledge building, we focus on community building, we focus on transparency and the ability to ask questions. And so they're really the three big areas that all of this activity is built on. From a knowledge building, we built some remote first skills classes that people go through asynchronously, of course, to really help them with their remote skills. We've built a load of modules that are focused on the company and what people need to know about the company. From an asking questions perspective, CEO Ask Me Anything sessions, exec Ask Me Anything sessions, but really building communities of cohorting new hires in Slack has been really effective for us. And that answers not just the where do I go for a question, but also our ability to share knowledge with groups.
Do they have their own Slack channel, each cohort?
Each cohort has its own group, and they stick together for the first 100 days, but we see live activity in those channels post 100 days because of the relationships that the group have built.
Okay, actionable tip out there, any Slack orgs out there, set up a channel for your new hire cohort so that they can feel like they're going through something together. That's something that doesn't cost anything.
And then a real focus on community. So as well as cohorting, we've done async social events. We've brought people together in various different groups. We've highlighted to them the employee resource groups around specific interests, which could be anything from diversity, equity, and inclusion to I like flying, I'm a private pilot. So I want to join a group of people who want to send pictures of clouds or whatever they want to do all day. And so really helping people to find their people within the organization and have that be an effective part of them feeling part of community has been really cool. And then, as I said, publishing the feedback that we get. We've taken extensive feedback throughout this journey, really asking the tough questions like, is remote first working a towering strength of our culture, yes or no? And asking people to mark our homework as we go through this evolution has challenged all of us to really try and help these team members be a success. But I give so much credit to the Remote First team member success team that we established. It's a small and mighty group, and they've done so much just by waking up every day and being focused on these issues.
Paul, who came up with the expression towering strength of our culture?
It was our CEO, our founder and CEO.
So I think Paul said it 4 or 5 times. These are not modest goals for their remote employee experience, and it's coming from the CEO. Another follow-up question that I know the answer to, what is your title?
VP of Communications and Remote Working.
VP of Remote Working. So you can learn a lot about a company, about where they apply their resources, particularly their executive resources. And I think the first thing Paul said is, like, we knew we had to staff up for these workflows, that it wasn't new expense. We were reallocating budget. So dedicated resources, clear measurement, transparency about how we're doing, chopping it up into different parts of a cycle. So pre-boarding, onboarding, extending out 100 days, I think you said. So this is some pretty actionable stuff. Okay, we appreciate that.
To be honest, I wanted that title as well, to extend my career a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, it's a big rising tide, right? No.
Felt like a good move, to be honest.
Can anyone relate to that? Yeah. Marion, let's go over to you. So when you onboard folks to Meridian, how do you make them feel part of something? Again, you've been doing this for a long time.
It's very important. This is why the pregame is such a big deal for us. Before we onboard, we kind of share the candidate's profile with the rest of the teammates, and we do a huddle and we say, okay, so-and-so is starting this day. This is what she does. She has this many kids. Her birthday is so-and-so. Like, we built a very robust candidate profile that we share with the rest of the team. And, going back into transparency, it starts there. You want them to share, you want to share the information that you know about the candidate with the rest of the team so they can, go in there, build rapport, build relationships, and know how to interact with the new candidates. And I always tell them, even, it starts with recruitment, right? There's a major shift in the Philippines because before, jobs are very scarce. And, recruiters were kind of in this pedestal before of, I open, the gates of, fortune to whoever comes my way, right? And having to change that mindset within Filipinos, particularly with my first onboarding recruitment team, saying, it's them first. It's all about them. You're selling to them this role. They come here, they need a job, but at the same time, they can go to the next, place. And so also sharing the same sentiment with our partners, because, we've partnered with US-based or European-based startups who want to scale their companies. And so usually they'll say, oh, what is the normal onboarding process? I always say, it's all about fit. And then now I say, it's all about the candidate. It's nice to present to them what your culture is, but really understand that the way to win them and, start that process is to put them first. So
very consistent. I saw this when I was scouting out your website. Your values come through on it. It's not, and particularly in the Philippines where there's a history of not so great behavior in terms of outsourcing there. It sounds like you're really setting the bar for how to treat candidates and employees. So we have time for one more question before we get to Q&A. And the question, this is not a big question. It is a big question, but how durable is this whole thing? Flash forward 5-7 years. Is there a big, awesome running remote conference? Are companies taking this seriously, or are CEOs just waiting for the chance to snap back to the office managed by walking around? Brandon, I'm not going to start with you because I know where your head is going to be at. I don't know, Janelle, why don't we start with you? How durable is remote work, and how's it going to go? I mean, Google is forcing everybody back, right? I know Wall Street wants everybody back. Certain industries are. Where's your head at?
I think we've talked a lot about how things have flipped to the candidate, and the candidates want flexibility. Those candidates become the colleagues. They're the people that we end up hiring into these remote workforces. If that continues to stay the same, if people continue to want this flexibility and this different way of working, it's going to be interesting because I see a mismatch right now. Some companies are on board and they understand that. And they're saying, yes, we need to change things. Yes, we need to move so that we can bring the best talent in. But then you do have some companies that are digging their heels in a bit, that are like, I'm just waiting for it to go back to how it used to be. Because I know I'm that old school CEO that wants to walk around and interact with people. So I think if the candidates continue to drive the message, we keep seeing it happen, right? The gentleman you just spoke about at Apple. I'm leaving because I need flexibility. When we continue to hear those stories and we continue to see the power sit with the candidates, I do believe it's going to be something that continues.
Yeah, is talent going to be the deciding factor? I actually think it comes down to that. Paul, what do you think? Durable or not?
I don't know what you want me to say at the Running Remote conference, to be honest, but
the VP of remote work.
Honestly, the comet that is remote work is heading for the dinosaurs that are not seeing this happening, and the corporate climb downs are going to keep happening, and there's no way back.
Brandon, is there a world where Zapier is like, well, we were first with remote work, and now we're going to go counterculture and drive everybody back to the office because we want to be the cool kids still? No.
Not a chance. But, like a lot of growing organizations, the more we grow, the more hubs around the world. We have 2, 3, 5, 7 folks, all within commuting distance of each other. So that's an opportunity for us, being able to come together in person from time to time is part of the glue that holds our 100% remote model together. And as we grow, one of the things we're most excited about is how to in ways that are even more organic than in the past, unlock that in hubs around the world.
Huge
But
point
no
there.
offices.
Offsites used to be a boondoggle. Now they're mission critical. I don't know how we would run our business without quarterly offsites, and it sounds like you're on the same page with that. Marion, over to you. Durable or just a trend, just a fad?
Not just durable, it's here to stay, but people are learning and evolving how to work remotely. When we started fully remote, we were like, yeah, this is the way to go. The pandemic hit, and we were like, we got it, and the demand for work started rising, and things were really great. We experienced the greatest growth. But now, one of the things I'm challenged with is figuring out as a remote team, how do we keep the flow of communication and the human connection going? And so one of the things that I've incorporated that we're going to be, actually this is why I was in Egypt, was incorporating the metaverse into our infrastructure to where we have an opportunity to go in and work together in the same space, because Zoom just doesn't cut it sometimes. And so I see a lot of companies evolving and taking on new ways to work remotely, to be able, again, to adapt to all of those, freelancers, remote workers, and this growing gig economy.
Yeah, third spaces, like Salesforce is building these third non-offices that are just wonderful places to kind of congregate and come together. I mean, cities need to reinvent each other, like reinvent itself. San Francisco, you go downtown, it's a ghost town, all these towers that are empty. Like, what are we going to do about that? So lots of good stuff there. Okay, we have 6 minutes, and we are going to do rapid fire Q&A. So some great questions are coming in. From Jesse Rucker, talking tech stack, what onboarding tools have you tried? What was your favorite combo? Paul, any thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't mention it actually. That was one of the key things. Great question. So having a learning management system to deliver content to people through that 100 days and to make it programmatic was really key. We used 360 Learning and really enjoyed it as a tool.
360 Learning. Brandon, any tools Zapier uses a go-to?
We use a tool called onboarding to sequence a lot of our experience. Like what Paul mentioned, we do it through the first 100 days or so, and we link that together using onboarding. We also use a lot of Zapier.
Nice. Anything Adecco is using?
But we also have a learning management system. Tavuti is the company that we use, but I think that is key, right? To be able to house everything in one place so that people can go in there on their own time and really not only take their onboarding classes, but anything else that they may be interested in to provide that continuous learning.
Yeah, and from a startup perspective, we're seeing Onboarder, we're seeing a company called PIM, and then we're seeing Twine. So if you want to come talk about that, come see me at the booth downstairs. Okay, other questions here. Do you have any tips or best practices for training new hires with zero experience in remote environment? This is from Karen Lewis. I think you all have a module for that. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, we built 4 modules that you can complete pretty quickly in 90 minutes, but that really give some of those foundational skills. But the key thing is managers doing those things when people land in their role, and role modeling and leading, async, documentation first, all the things that we all know in this room are really key to success. We need to upskill managers as much as we need to upskill new hires.
I think that's one of the biggest gaps we see also as we talk with clients, is that we were all thrown into this different way of working without a lot of training. And so you're right, being able to really train managers and walk them through the expectations and how you go about doing it, right, and making sure they're comfortable with it adds to that experience. Because if the hiring manager doesn't know how to help shape that experience, you're not going to have a great experience.
We made the mistake early on in trying to sell async to our team, and it's like, so what? Whereas selling less meetings, selling work-life harmony, selling the things that you can achieve if you apply these skills. So we pivoted and now focus on the outcomes, not the thing.
A quick question on staffing. Size of company, size of people team. Brandon, are you comfortable sharing number of employees and the size of the people team?
Sure. 700 employees, 53-person people team.
Great. Janelle, are you comfortable sharing for Adecco?
I can share for the Canadian group. I don't have the global numbers, but 350 here, and we have a 10-person team.
And how about Cimpress?
To be honest, I don't know. We have 14,000 people around the world, but we're very decentralized in terms of the businesses running their own stuff. And so I don't know what HR infrastructure they have in those.
Does your role overlay all 14,000? Is it across the full org?
So I focus on the 2,000 remote first team members in Cimpress Central Teams and vistaprint.
Got it. And how about you? How many full-time people folks do you have at Meridian?
I'm the baby in this group. So for us, it's 168 as of yesterday.
Wow. Okay. And I bet you're handling a lot of the people stuff yourself, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It all starts from the bottom,
Okay. A question from Julie Johnson. How important is face-to-face meetings in the onboarding? Oop, it just flipped. How important is face-to-face meeting in the onboarding experience? Is anyone, I'm going to ad-lib this because I can't see the question anymore. Is anyone building in new hire experiences at their offsites, at their in-person offsites? Brandon, are you all doing anything like this? Is there any special content at your offsites for the new hires?
We do some socials and related activities. But of course, for the last 2 years, we haven't been able to get together in person. So we've done some virtual substitutes for them.
What kind of virtual stuff?
It actually starts with the very first day. So it's just amazing what you can get access to these days. So we'll do like a social on the first day where the hiring managers and the new hires can come together. We also do some team builders as well, like everything from a virtual escape room to trivia as a way to help people come together. And there is one other very specific practice that we use to just help build trust between a new hire, their manager, and their immediate team. And that we call the README. The README is just a very short, simple document that everyone at Zapier writes when they join the company that gets a little behind the curtain on how I operate, the way I like to organize my time, the other things that matter to me in my life, the principles that inform how I approach my work. And new hires will write that in the first couple of weeks. They'll read the READMEs of their closest colleagues and manager. And it's a way to kind of just like very quickly accelerate understanding and trust on a team, especially one that's operating remotely.
It's a personal operating system. I prefer, for urgent stuff, I prefer text, not email, like that level of granularity. Yeah, so
exactly.
Do some searches for personal operating system. This is a really fascinating part of async, and it's we didn't really get a chance to talk about async today, so the next panel we'll do that, I promise. So I think we can give 30 seconds back to the good folks at Running Remote to kind of get caught up on their calendar. Thank you so much to the panel. Can I please get a round of applause for this wonderful panel?
Thank you.
And are you all around today and tomorrow? Yes, so these folks will be floating around. Brandon will not be floating around, but please find them, ask them more questions, because these are domain experts here. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, welcome back. It's really, really awesome to have listened in to that conversation in stage one. That's where I was just now. Obviously, you're welcome to go wherever you please, including to the expo, where you're going to be able to hear from our platinum sponsors, Multiplier. Right? Multiplier is building the platform that simplifies the employment process by taking charge of the complexities involved in expanding and hiring in new markets. Imagine not having the headaches of payroll, compliance, employment contracts, taxes, and benefits, so that you can instead focus on finding the best talent with paramount confidence. Multiplier's motto is making international employment easy and risk-free. They help employers enter new markets, fast-track growth, and avoid the hassle of incorporating a new entity. People at Multiplier have always pioneered for employers to become confident and employ globally, and to encourage their employees to work from places that bring out their productivity and happiness, be it from the comfort of their homes, a co-working space, or even the beach if they like. Build and scale your remote teams across the globe. The incentive that Multiplier is offering is that they're running a 3 months free offer to all attendees of Running Remote. The offer is redeemable against the company, giving businesses unlimited use of their employment software so that they can hire as many new employees as they wish, free of charge for 3 months. They provide one comprehensive platform to manage your global teams compliantly and take care of your payroll, taxes, social contributions, and local insurance policies. The details can be found at Also, our gold sponsors, Juno and Staff Virtual. Juno, if you would like your well-being programs to be taken to the next level, our event sponsor, Juno, is here for you. Juno's vision is a better life for all of us, living freely and thriving with less stress and more joy. Juno wants to create a world where employers actively encourage and create joyful lives rather than hinder them. With Juno, your team can choose how they take care of their well-being by accessing hundreds of globally available and meaningful products and services. This means they can get exactly what they need to support their well-being inside and outside work, regardless of their location. Each one of your employees gets a monthly allowance of Juno points, which can be spent in 3 ways: on their marketplace, through a virtual Juno card, and the reimbursements feature. Reach out to sales at withjuno.com and mention that you came through Running Remote and get 10% off your first month's employee allowance and 1 month fee free. They are doing a 15-point giveaway, an additional 200 points referral for anyone who successfully refers their company. And, Staff Virtual. Choosing the right outsourcing company to partner with is not an easy decision, especially for first-time outsourcers. It's always a matter of trust and personal relationship. We would like to recommend you our event sponsor and company that we have partnered with for years. Today, Staff Virtual has employed thousands of employees across Philippines, from the northernmost part all the way to the south. Staff Virtual aims to help companies around the world in future-proofing their business by developing proven and tested remote management methodologies, taking into consideration enterprise-grade management, equipment, IT support, and cybersecurity, as well as business community continuity plans to strategically help companies grow without the pains and headaches of remote management. They are experts at quickly standing up teams of Filipino professionals that make your businesses more efficient and profitable. Schedule a free consultation at www.staffvirtual.com. Really interested to learn more from you all in the chat, in networking, as we connect on socials, all the different places. Really, really interested to hear what you had to say. For myself, Darren and I were rhyming with one another in the chat about readmes, and also there was some love for the Cimpress Vista folks. They're Paul McKinlay. He's talking about their onboarding stuff. It was really, really awesome to hear and learn from the experiences of all those really large employers. Those things are available to you as leaders of small companies, large companies. I've done similar things at my previous jobs of impressing upon leadership and also leading myself to be someone that is a resource, to show how this can be done well. And then, you can show everybody who has come into the team, hey, try it this way. See if this works for you. And turns out when you do the things that are best practices that are being, championed by Paul and others, that is the way to get things done remotely. Do it with intention. Do it on purpose. These are the things that we're inviting everyone into, and it is possible. You can do it too.